Welcome back to Week 14 of Talking Bama with Big C. I'm your host, Colin Big C. McGuire. I was a former student manager on Coach Bryant's 1978 and 79 national championship teams, and we're going to be doing the recap of the Western Carolina game and also the history of the Alabama-Auburn football series. So let's go ahead and do the recap of this past weekend's game, which was homecoming at Alabama. It was broadcasted on the SEC network. The game was at 3 p.m. Central Time. And Alabama, what they did was Western Carolina decided to receive the ball. So Alabama kicked out to them, and because they were running that hurry-up offense, which Alabama's had problems with in the past, Western Carolina, good little team, as Coach Nick Saban called them, drove downfield to go ahead 7-0. Well, Alabama all of a sudden put 17 straight points up to be up 17-7. And then Derrick Henry fumbled the ball on the Alabama 12, and then all of a sudden, Western Carolina made it a 17-14 game. And then after that, Alabama started to put their foot on the gas, and they raced out to a 38-17 lead at the half. And then what was interesting at the beginning of the second half, Jacob Coker, the backup quarterback, started the whole second half and to get more experience. And I think one of the reasons why Coach Saban put him in at quarterback, some of the starters like Amari Cooper got hurt. The one good thing, a real good positive, was that they were able to play many people, and even the third quarterback, Alec Morris, got in with the last minute to take a few snaps. And Alabama statistically played real well. They gained over 600 yards of total offense against Western Carolina, and that's about the fifth time this year Alabama's gained over 500 plus yards on offense. And it seems like every time when they do that at home at Bryant-Denny Stadium. For whatever reason, they're very more comfortable playing in front of the home crowd than on the road, or even at a neutral site like they did in Atlanta against West Virginia. But anyway, Alabama gave up a -8 yards rushing and gained about 612 in total offense to make the record now 10-1 on the season, with Auburn coming up this coming weekend. Now we're going to talk about the Alabama-Auburn football series. It started in 1892. It was supposed to be, it was 1892 football season, but the game was played on February 22nd, 1893, with Alabama losing 32-22 to Auburn up in Birmingham. Alabama's first win against Auburn was on November 29th, 1894 in Birmingham by the score of 18-0. And then what happened in 1907, they had a tie, and the series was disbanded for 41 years, and it was renewed in 1948 on December the 4th, and has been played ever since. The game that we're going to talk about today is the biggest game ever in the Alabama-Auburn football series. Was from 1971, with both Alabama and Auburn entered the Iron Bowl, as it was nicknamed by Coach Shug Jordan, on November 27th, 1971. Auburn was 9-0 and Alabama was 10-0, and Alabama was number 3 in the nation and Auburn was number 4. And on November 25th, 2 days earlier on Thanksgiving Day, Pat Sullivan, the Auburn quarterback, was named the Heisman Trophy winner. So it was a big showdown up at Legion Field. It was a cold day that day. That was the first Alabama-Auburn game yours truly attended, and it was a really great game. And Johnny Musso, the Italian Stallion, the running back for Alabama, had 33 carries for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. But anyway, and 2 interceptions by Chuck Strickland and Jeff Rousey turned a close game into a rout. And even Alabama could have scored another touchdown, but Johnny Musso fumbled the ball on the 3-yard line. But Musso scored on runs of 5 and 12 yards to make the final score 31-7. Auburn was held to 27 yards rushing that day on 16 carries, and Alabama possessed the ball for 42 minutes to go in the regular season 11-0 and win the first worst SEC championship of the 70s, first of 8 in that decade. And so that was what happened on that day. But right now we're almost up against the break. When we come back, we'll be discussing the matchups of this year's Alabama-Auburn football game. We're back. Before we go into the matchups of this year's Alabama-Auburn game, here's the trivia question. On the 1971 coaching staff, Alabama had a assistant the year before, was an assistant at Auburn. Name him. We're going into the matchups, and as you know, I do the Coach Gene Stallings method of picking the game or matching up the two teams. Who can run the ball the best, who stops the run the best, and who has the turnover margin best will win the game. So here's what I have for today. Nationally, Alabama is number 2 in rushing defense versus Auburn's rushing offense of number 9. Alabama's rushing offense of number 34 versus Auburn's rushing defense of 38. And then Alabama's turnover margin is 70 versus Auburn's 42. So what I believe is that Auburn might put some points on the board, but Alabama's offense will, especially Amari Cooper, who I believe will play. If he plays, Alabama will at least score 38 points. So I'm picking a 38-24 win for Alabama on Saturday. All right, now we're going to go into the gradingcollegefootball.com top 10. And I want to explain it to you like I have always on this show, how that happens. Now, if you play a team that's a Power 5 team and beat them, you get 3 points. A team that's not a non-power team but a Division I team, you get 2 points, like Troy, for instance. And then like Alabama this past weekend playing an FCS team or Division I AA team, you get 1 point. Alabama this past weekend got a total of 2 points because they played an FCS team and also a team that was unranked. The week before, when they played Mississippi State, they got 3 points for playing a Power 5 team and beating them, and also 3 points for beating a ranked team. So that's how the grading college football point system works. And there's other things, but later on we'll explain that later to you. But right now, let's go ahead and tell you who's ranked, where they're ranked. Number 1 is Florida State with 52 points. Oregon's number 2 with 43. Tied for 3rd is Alabama and Ohio State with 42. Mississippi State's number 5 with 50. Tied, 3 teams are tied for 6th place. UCLA, Arizona State, and Marshall with 38. And then tied for 9th, which is the last 2 teams, which will be 9 and 10, because they're tied, is TCU and Baylor. And it really makes it interesting how later on this season they've been talking on the radio who's going to be, because TCU right now in the college football playoff rankings is ranked ahead of Baylor, but Baylor beat them head-to-head. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ask you, or give you the answer to the trivia question we asked earlier in the show. And the trivia question is, name on the 1971 Alabama football team, Alabama had an assistant on that staff who was an assistant coach the year before at Auburn in 1970. And the answer is Bill Oliver, who coached the defensive backs, who coached at Alabama the first time from 1971 to 79, and then came back with Coach Gene Stallings and coached from 1990 to 95, and he also played at Alabama from 1959 to 61. We're coming to a close, and I want to thank the following people who helped make this show happen. Producer James Crenshaw, executive producer Robert Williamson, and I also want to thank all you good folks that watch this show and let people know about this show. Like us on Facebook, share us with your friends. I also want to let you know, got a show called Talking Sports with Big C from 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time on Jock, and you can listen to it at www.jockjive.com and tell your friends about that show also. But anyway, as always, when we close, roll, Tide, roll!